Welcome to a new edition of Mission Minute News. I'm Dominican Sister Jean Harris. First, the headlines. Pope asks us to welcome new life. Savior siblings. Asian bishops support jailed Jesuit. McGivney goodness recognized. Sanchez receives Dinner Hour Award. German taxation and faith. Pope asks us to welcome new life. In comments to Polish-speaking pilgrims during the general audience on October 22nd, the new feast day of Pope St. John Paul II, Pope Francis launched an appeal to defend life from conception to natural end. He noted that the Polish Pope had always promoted love for the most vulnerable and defenseless, including the protection of every human being from conception to natural death. Pope Francis said, "I ask God to arouse in the hearts of all respect for the life of our brothers and sisters, especially the most vulnerable and defenseless, and to give strength to those who welcome and care for it, even when this requires heroic love." Coincidentally, on the 22nd of October, Poland's Constitutional Tribunal ruled to ban abortion in all but exceptional circumstances like incest, rape, or threat to the mother's health. The court ruled that abortion for fetal abnormalities was unconstitutional. Poland's ruling party leader, Jarosław Kaczynski, said that the new abortion measures could not be reversed under the current constitution. After the court's decision, mass protests ensued across the country in defiance of restrictions imposed by COVID-19, even disrupting church services. In an appeal to members and supporters of his ruling Law and Justice Party, Kaczynski said Polish churches had to be defended. Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki has called for an end to the mass protests, saying those attending were disregarding massive risks from the resurgent pandemic and assuring protection and care for children born with health problems. Savior siblings. Ethical questions abound on the use of technology to create a child for the purpose of saving or curing an older sibling by becoming the donor of organs, cell, or bone marrow. Sibling donor success is very high compared to the 20 to 30% from an unrelated donor. This new technology is called pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, PGD. The embryos are usually created from in vitro fertilization, or IVF, which allows a disease-causing gene to be identified and eliminated from the embryo. The embryo is screened and matched to the intended outcome, and when perfect, it is implanted into a mother's womb, thereby creating a savior sibling. Moreover, PGD allows the removal of any unwanted traits in the embryo. A boy from Gujarat, India, named Abhishek, who suffered from thalassemia, a disorder in which the hemoglobin count is so low that blood transfusions are needed every 20 to 22 days. A bone marrow transplant was the only possible cure, but of course it must be a match. Dr. Manish Bankar, one of India's best-known fertility specialists, was tasked to create a thalassemia-free fetus for Abhishek's treatment. It took Dr. Banko 6 months to create the embryo, screen and perfect the match, and then implant it in Abhishek's mother's womb. In October 2018, the savior sibling named Kavya was born. And when she turned 18 months old, her bone marrow was extracted and transplanted into her brother by Dr. Deepa Trivedi in March 2020. Though Kavya's own hemoglobin went down so low she suffered severe pain initially after the procedure, both the children are reported to be completely healthy now. Since the transplant, Abhijit has not needed another transfusion. This medical technology was already tested 20 years ago here in the US with Adam Nash as the savior sibling and his sister Molly. The movie My Sister's Keeper was also loosely based on their Colorado family. But it raises a host of ethical and religious questions. Is the savior sibling merely an engineered medical commodity? What long-term psychological effects might there be? Does this open the door to designer children? Is it right to give birth and use one child to fix the imperfections of another? Repercussions and dangers to the savior sibling are not clear, and are we not causing these dangers without the consent of the savior? What are the parental responsibilities? Are we playing God by trying to create perfect babies? Where is our faith and belief in God as creator and protector in all this? Should believers raise objections against this new technology? Indeed, questions abound. Asian bishops support jailed Jesuit. The Federation of Asian Bishops' Conferences, FABC, is calling for the release of Indian Jesuit priest Father Stan Swamy and 15 human rights activists facing trial for alleged links with indigenous Maoist rebels, Uka News reported. It is with great shock and agony that the FABC heard of the arrest and incarceration of 83-year-old Father Swamy, and we are surprised at the charges brought against him, said Uka News, citing a statement by Cardinal Charles Bo of Yangon, the president of FABC. This reminds us of the treatment meted out to Mahatma Gandhi when he stood up for the rights of the Indian people, the cardinal said in his appeal. He hoped the country's leaders will show sagacity and magnanimity in appreciating the services of Father Swamy and other indigenous peoples' leaders, releasing them as free citizens of India. Father Swamy has been working to secure the release of young tribal activists fighting for their ancestral land rights and against forced displacement. They have been arrested and jailed, accused of being members of Maoist groups engaged in violence in Jharkhand. According to the Asian Bishops' President, the Asian market economy and its promoters have treated indigenous communities with a colonial mentality, making them environmental refugees. Yet, it is the indigenous communities who are protecting and restoring nature. The day after his arrest, a special court in Mumbai, Maharashtra state, remanded him in judicial custody until October 23rd, at which time a bail plea on health grounds was rejected by the court, extending his remand by another 2 weeks until November 5th. The frail and ailing priest suffers from Parkinson's disease and hearing loss. The incident is reminiscent of injustices perpetrated against other social activists around the world. McGivney goodness recognized. the Vatican announced that Pope Francis approved the promulgation of a decree recognizing a miracle attributed to the intercession of the founder of the Knights of Columbus, Venerable Father Michael J. McGivney, a Connecticut priest who served his flock during the pandemic of 1890, during which he himself became ill and died of pneumonia at age 38 on August 14th. The miracle involved an unborn child in 2015 who was healed in utero of a life-threatening condition by his family's prayers to Father McGivney. In March 2008, he had been declared a venerable servant of God by Pope Benedict XVI during his visit to St. Patrick's Cathedral. An additional miracle attributed to now blessed Father McGivney will pave the way for his canonization. McGivney is best known for founding the Knights of Columbus in 1882. 83 years before the Second Vatican Council, his vision empowered the laity to serve church and neighbor in a new way. Today, the Knights of Columbus is one of the largest Catholic organizations in the world, with 2 million members in North and Latin America, Canada, the Caribbean, Asia, and Europe. The Beatification Mass took place on October 31st in Connecticut. Earlier this year, in an address to the KFC Board of Directors, Pope Francis said the organization has been faithful to the vision of your founder, Blessed Michael McGivney, who was inspired by the principles of Christian charity and fraternity to assist those most in need. Born of Irish immigrant parents in 1852 in Waterbury, Connecticut, Father McGivney was a central figure in the dramatic growth of the Church in the United States in the late 19th century. Ordained in Baltimore in 1877, he ministered to a heavily Irish-American and immigrant community in the then Diocese of Hartford. At the time of anti-Catholic sentiment, he worked tirelessly to keep his flock close to the faith, in part by finding practical solutions to their many problems, both spiritual and temporal, and founded the Knights of Columbus in 1882 at St. Mary's Church in New Haven. Their goals were to provide spiritual support for Catholic breadwinners and financial resources for families that had suffered the loss of their breadwinner. The fledgling group soon became a major source in the areas of evangelization, charity, racial integration, and the defense of religious freedom. Full disclosure, Wordnet has been the grateful recipient of help from local KFC councils several times. Sanchez receives Dinner Hour Award. On October 2nd, Mr. Eloy Sanchez was presented with the City Talk Community Impact Award by Dr. Luis Gonzalez, Colton City Council member. For 30 years, Mr. Eloy Sanchez has led a collaborative effort of dozens of volunteers to provide food distribution for those who need support and a very popular dinner hour to anyone who needs a hot meal, explained Dr. Gonzalez. Eloy Sanchez does this service in coordination with Immaculate Conception Church in Colton, California, and with the very generous help of Mr. Bruno Gutierrez. He began the program in 1991, helping the previous leader, Rudy Cordero, by doing the bread pickup. Nowadays, food banks deliver directly to the church, and Eloy's food distribution has grown from 75 boxes of food to 312 for families in need in 200 cars each week. Last year, distribution totaled over 500,000 pounds of donated food. Gutierrez's help has been invaluable, donating freezers, refrigerators, stoves, chairs, tables, trash containers, and even a large box truck to pick up food bank boxes and food pallets. This program would not be possible without his help, says Sanchez. We are proud to call Eloy and his wife Mona our beloved friends. German taxation and faith. Churches in Germany are largely funded through taxes collected by the government's Federal Central Tax Office. Religious denominations are legally allowed to collect taxes from German citizens who register as members. The religious tax rate averages 8.5% of the individual's taxes. A German registered either as Catholic, Protestant, or Jew who earns 100,000 euros and whose tax rate is 10% will pay the German government 10,000 euros in taxes, plus the applicable religious tax rate of 850 euros for a total tax of 10,850 euros. The 850 will then be remitted to the church, where the German taxpayer attends. The only way they can stop paying the tax is to make an official declaration renouncing their membership in a denomination. Focusing only on Catholics, in 2019, more than 272,000 Catholics left the church in Germany. According to the Munich Statistics Office, in Munich alone, more than 10,000 Catholics withdrew, losing their rights to obtain the sacraments of matrimony, baptism, confirmation, or burial, to work in Catholic-owned schools or hospitals, or even to become a godparent. Of course, various reasons were given for leaving the church, including having to pay the church tax and clerical abuse. Last year, the German bishops announced plans for a 2-year synodal way, bringing together lay people and bishops to discuss 4 major topics: the way power is exercised in the church, sexual morality, the priesthood, and the role of women. They said that the process would end with a series of votes which raised concern at the Vatican that the resolutions might challenge church teaching and discipline. In June 2019, Pope Francis sent a 28-page letter to German Catholics urging them to focus on evangelization in the face of a growing erosion and deterioration of faith. In one of his addresses to the German bishops, he said that one can truly speak of an erosion of the Catholic faith in Germany, urging them to overcome resignation, which paralyzes. He also wrote that every time an ecclesial community has tried to get out of its problems alone, relying solely on its own strengths, methods, and intelligence, it has ended up multiplying and nurturing the evils it wanted to overcome. The first German Synodal Assembly took place in Frankfurt at the end of January 2020. We are hopeful that the synodal resolutions find a way to reconcile and restore relapsed believers. Sorrowful Mother painting retrieved. La Dolorosa, a large painting of Our Lady of Sorrows, was unearthed September 15th in the rubble of the 249-year-old San Gabriel Archangel Mission, as reported by officials of the Los Angeles Archdiocese on Thursday, October 15th. You will recall our earlier story about the devastating fire that completely destroyed the mission's roof on July 11th and gutted much of the interior. And although the benches, which had just been refurbished in preparation for a grand 250th anniversary celebration next year, were likewise ruined, most of the mission's historic paintings were still in storage. However, this 18th century painting, also known as Mater Dolorosa, or Sorrowful Mother, had remained in the tiny, more protected baptistry just off the nave. Amazingly, it was found by workers, mostly unscathed and buried beneath a burnt crossbeam. It was September 15th, the very date for the liturgical commemoration of, you guessed it, Our Lady of Sorrows. The mission's communications director, Terry Huerta, among the first to hear of the painting's survival, recognized the significance of the date. "This is the feast day of Our Lady of Sorrows," exclaimed Huerta. That we found La Dolorosa in ashes but surviving on her own feast day, it's encouraging. Investigators are still unsure of the cause of the blaze. They know it began in the choir loft, then spread to the ceiling and wooden roof, reducing most of the structure's interior to ash and rubble as the roof fell in. But the altar area, 6-bell tower, sacristy, and museum sustained only smoke damage. Arson is suspected, but no evidence has been found. Firefighters gave a preliminary damage estimate of $5 million. The Archdiocese is initiating a plan to help rebuild the church, beginning with a temporary roof. About $200,000 has been raised so far. For Anthony Morales, tribal chief of the San Gabrielino Mission Tongva Indians and a member of the parish, the damage was more than material. "These are my roots," Morales told Angelus News, holding back tears as he surveyed the scene hours after the fire had been contained. "This is my church. All my ancestors are buried in the cemetery next door. 6,000 of my ancestors are buried on these grounds, and this is the church that they built. It's just very devastating." Despite earthquakes and fire, the people of Mission San Gabriel will have strong hope that it will be born again as a place of healing and new hope. Bloody attack in French church. On October 29th, an attacker with a knife killed 3 people in the Basilica of Notre Dame in Nice, France, the third attack in 2 months in France. The church is less than a half-mile from the site where another attacker in 2016 plowed a truck into a crowd, killing dozens. The attacker was wounded by police and hospitalized after the killings. These latest victims were identified as an elderly woman, a sacristan, and another young Catholic. The elderly woman was found inside the church, nearly beheaded, while another person died of stab wounds after fleeing the attack to a nearby cafe. We join our prayers with Pope Francis and pray for the Catholic community in Nice, especially the families who have lost loved ones, the U.S. Bishops' Conference stated via Twitter. France's Anti-Terrorism Prosecutor's Office opened an investigation into the killings, and the lower house of Parliament held a moment of silence for the victims. Chief Prosecutor Jean-François Ricard said the suspect of the attack is a 21-year-old Tunisian national who entered France on October the 9th and had previously been in Lampedusa, an Italian island that serves as a European entry point for migrants from Africa. We join Pope Francis in prayer and hope for healing in these tragedies. Papal audiences curtailed again. General audiences with the Pope before the pandemic were held in the public square in front of St. Peter's Basilica. Lockdowns had caused the audiences to be virtual, but in September, members of the public were permitted to attend the weekly audience in a smaller interior courtyard of the Vatican with a capacity for around 500 participants, socially distanced and wearing masks. On October 28th, the Pope told participants that instead of coming near you and shaking your hands and greeting you, we have to greet each other from a distance, but know that I am near you with my heart. Then someone attending one of the audiences tested positive for COVID-19. So on October 29th, the Vatican announced that Pope Francis' weekly gatherings will again take place behind closed doors. Government restrictions generally are back in effect as the number of coronavirus cases continues to climb in Italy. Measures include a ban on most indoor or outdoor gatherings other than religious services, and bars and restaurants must be closed to sit-down guests. Future general audiences are suspended and will be live-streamed from the library of the Vatican's Apostolic Palace. It was also announced that for the coming months, all papal liturgies will be celebrated privately with a limited number of faithful present and will be live-streamed, allowing viewers to follow through television or social media. Vestment symbolism. 4 years ago, about this time in October, Father Stephen Kelly, Jesuit, celebrated the Eucharist during a national gathering of Catholic workers that had just ended in Las Vegas. The celebration occurred on sacred land taken from the Western Shoshone Nation 70 years ago by the U.S. that is now known as the Nevada National Security Site for the testing of nuclear weapons. Nowhere else on earth has suffered so many nuclear detonations. With the permission of the Western Shoshone National Council, the site has also been a place of worship, penance, and nonviolent resistance for many years. Liturgical celebrations are less formal in this windswept desert. A card table with a cloth is the altar, with ceramic cup and plate. Instead of alb and chasuble, Father Steve wore an orange jailhouse uniform as the vestment and apologized for any misunderstanding or offense. He explained that normal vestments had evolved from the Roman ruling class in Jesus' time, like some elaborate vestments still used today. He further explained that remembering the death of Jesus and the Last Supper before his arrest, it was fitting for the priest to be dressed as a prisoner. Father Steve's wearing orange polyester comes honestly. He spent more than 11 years in the khaki or orange dress of a prisoner for his participation in nonviolent resistance to war and nuclear testing. Some Catholic workers support his views, saying, especially now in this most dangerous of times, the voices we desperately need to hear are those of the margins, and only rarely the voices spoken from palaces and pulpits of the well-heeled and well-dressed. News from the Arnaldos family. God provides. In Blessed Josepha Preschool in the village of Kasungula in Zambia, teachers look for a variety of lessons for the children. The very simple setting in a poor village brings something new every day. Through stories, songs, pictures, and art, they have been teaching about different modes of transportation. Every year there's an educational tour for the students to see and experience something beyond what they see in the village of Kazungula. Although a trip was not possible this year because of COVID-19 and financial constraints, suddenly something unexpected happened, which became a wonderful opportunity for them to see, touch, experience, and learn about helicopters. One morning, while in class, they saw 2 helicopters looking for a place to land, which then they did on the playground close to the preschool. Everyone hurried outside to have a look at those big birds. There were 2 helicopters, 2 trucks, and a group of soldiers assigned with a special mission to Kazungula. After watching from a distance, the children soon received permission from the captain to approach and board one of the helicopters. The soldiers gave an educational talk about the use of these big machines, and everyone was allowed to watch the helicopter take off. Those little children in that small village in Africa had a truly amazing experience they'll never forget. Uganda Mission. Sister Francesca Lucina Ratajek and Sister Dorothea Poli, who are in charge of the Holy Childhood Mission, continue serving the children in 30 chapels in Bidibidi Settlement, one of the SSPS missions in Uganda. They follow pandemic restrictions as they move about and have meetings with small groups of people. 3 times in a week, we go to every chapel for catechism, rosary, prayer, and encourage the children to continue praying the rosary every day with the special intention of this pandemic. God be with you, guide your steps, and keep you safe, dear sisters. Zoom retreat at the U.S. West Province. The members of U.S. Western Province participated in a Zoom retreat from October 20 to 23rd this year. The retreat was guided by Reverend Roger Schroeder, Divine Word, and Reverend Steve Bevins, also Divine Word, on the topic of intercultural spirituality and mission today. Unable to gather in person at Divine Word Residence, Riverside, nonetheless, some of the communities and districts Zoomed together in one location. The presentations by Roger were The Holy Ground of My Life Story, a personal meditation on spiritual growth through intercultural action, Basic Understanding of Interculturality, based upon Anthony Gittin's book, The Intercultural Journey of Jesus, and the stories of the Syrophoenician woman, the Samaritan woman at the well, and the parable of the Good Samaritan, the intercultural journey of the early church, enriched by the spirituality of the other, and interculturality as prophetic dialogue. Steve Bevan's presentation was on Glimpsing the Reign of God, 11 Rules for Engaging Culture in Mission. The experience, though virtual, prompted good discussion and also afforded members the opportunity to see and greet one another after a long time. A mighty tree has fallen. On Monday, October 26, the first Santa Ana winds of the season hit the Inland Empire broadside with hurricane force. The good news, clear skies and a tremendous views of the mountains. The bad news, power outages, dust, and flying debris. Worst of all, the sudden death of the stalwart 100-year-old stone pine or umbrella pine in front of the Stonehouse Chapel at Divine Word Residence, Riverside. Father John Kirby, the provincial superior, reports, in the late afternoon, the sudden thunderous crack and foundation-shaking thud could be heard and felt for miles. we rushed out of the province office only to witness a veritable Armageddon stretched out before us. Startled and shocked, we slowly surveyed the scene, starting from the rootless chasm that mocked our eyes and glancing down at the long, winding trunk, the ponderously thick trunk with a 4-foot diameter that was now half buried in the stonehouse lawn. Then our already overfed eyes finally came to rest on the massive, chaotic tangle of branches and foliage that only a moment before was high above our heads, giving acres of shelter to all beneath. But now it was lying there like a beached whale, with a dozen long arms still waving in the wind, and another dozen beneath. This vast snarl of limbs had crushed the once tall cypresses, suffocated the submissive kumquat trees, and obliterated the walkway and the staircase to the chapel before perilously resting on the building's red tiles. Those 3 monumental trees that lined the road up to the stone house have long been hallmarks of our SVD Riverside property. They have been an integral part of Mary Grove, the original name for the Divine Word Seminary, for so long that they are part of our very identity. They were planted when they first built the whole mansion, which we call Stonehouse, and they were there long before any of the other buildings popped up. I was climbing in its branches, trimming away the dead wood under the direction of Father Bush 60 years ago. And it was a giant even then, John Kirby said. It is as if one of the 3 great guardians of our beloved Mary Grove has fallen, and with it, the entity itself has been diminished. So let us mourn for our fallen guardian. Something of our very self has died. It is the end of an era, and the province will not be the same without it. Dignity and sanctity of life. Each October, as we celebrate Respect Life Month, the Divine Word College Seminary community in Iowa partners with Dubuque County Right to Life to plant crosses on the seminary campus, each cross representing the soul of a child lost to abortion. Every year, October 15th is celebrated as Pregnancy and Loss Remembrance Day. We continue praying and working for a greater respect for the dignity and sanctity of life from conception to natural end. SVD Priest appointed to Interreligious Pontifical Council. Pope Francis has appointed Divine Word missionary priest Sebastian Maria Michael, a noted sociologist and writer, as a consultor of the Vatican's Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue. Father Michael is the honorary director of the Institute of Indian Culture at Mumbai, India. He heads the Commission for Interreligious Dialogue in the Archdiocese of Mumbai and is a professor in sociology and anthropology at Mumbai University. The October 22nd appointment is for a 5-year term. Comprised of bishops, clergy, nuns, and laity, the new consultors hail from different countries: Cambodia, Chile, Japan, Italy, the United States, Singapore, and Taiwan. This Pontifical Council was instituted as a special department of the Roman Curia by Pope Paul VI in 1964 as the central office of the Catholic Church for the promotion of interreligious dialogue in accordance with the spirit of the Second Vatican Council. Its role is to promote mutual understanding, respect, and collaboration between Catholics and those who follow other religious traditions. It also encourages the study of religions, and promotes the formation of persons dedicated to dialogue. Father Michael is a member of the Mumbai Indian province of the Divine Word Missionary Congregation and a member of the visiting faculty at the Anthropos Institute, Bonn, and Magdeburg University in Germany. He authored several books on culture and anthropology, published many articles in national and international journals, and was the SVD Asia-Pacific Zonal Coordinator until recently. Last word. God of all, in this time of uncertainty and fear, ignite us with the fire of your love. Inflame our hearts with courage to embrace dialogue that transforms and truth that frees. Kindle our love with kindness to heal and reconcile relationships. Enlighten our imaginations with insight to envision and create a world where all are one. Stir our actions with justice and peace to engage critical concerns and cherish all of life. Fire our lives with audacity and hope to risk all for God's mission. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell icon. Share with others about the channel and the variety of programs you can enjoy here. That's all for this edition of Mission Minute News. Until we meet again, stay safe, and may Jesus' love for you make you smile.